We're joined by Rick Grenell. We're talking now about, we're moving from school choice, which is an important topic, something we need to keep discussing, but we're talking about what's going on in the world of Israel and the BDS movement, and specifically what you may have seen and what you may think is a silly headline, but I think we need to break into what the serious nature of something like this is, which you have someone like Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream, American-based company run by two Jewish guys in Vermont. Very predominant liberal company. We've known that forever. This is not a shock that Ben & Jerry's would do this, but maybe made one of the biggest moves that we have seen in terms of the way trade is happening in Israel, and said, hey, we are putting a stop to the sales of our products, our ice cream. Yes, we're talking about ice cream, but you're talking about one of the biggest brands in the world in the, what they called, Will, what'd they call it?
The occupied Palestinian Territory.
The occupied Palestinian Territory, a.k.a. Jerusalem, those areas of Israel. Rick, you've been involved in the BDS movement, the anti-BDS movement, for a long time. I know you were calling on people saying essentially you're joining an Iran regime. You made big statements about this, because I don't know if people understand. I mean, you can't imagine those kind of things happening anywhere else in the world. It seems like Israel, it's the only place that it's allowed.
I actually think it's a really distorted sickness that many American companies are doing this. And I would lump in, protests like the U.S. soccer team into this. What is crazy about it is that Israel, in that entire region of the Middle East, is the one country that values human rights and pushes for the rule of law and capitalism. I mean, let's just take, this to the next level. And I think it's not too much to say that Ben & Jerry's ice cream is boycotting a country that is solidly for human rights and in favor of a territory that on a daily basis discriminates against people, including gay people, including women, including Christians. The idea that somehow they're doing good by punishing the country that is a beacon of human rights in the area is a sickness. I just don't see how it's an upside down world, and I don't see how people can view it any other way.
Rick, you were instrumental in one of the biggest anti-BDS movements in really history, with both the Abraham Accords and the Serbia-Kosovo recognition of the State of Israel. That did more, at least for me, to push back on the BDS movement last year than a lot of things have in recent history. Now they're seeming to get a foothold. Now it's a friendlier U.S. administration. How do you see this playing out when you have nations that historically weren't recognizing Israel kind of on the opposite end of the BDS spectrum now?
Yeah, it's such a good question. A couple of thoughts. One, U.S. leadership is required. I mean, multilateral institutions and very little works if the United States is not the leader. And so I would call upon the Biden administration to recognize that they're speaking to a few radical people inside the government. And the second point, which relates to that, is I actually think the people are on our side. When you talk to regular people, they understand that Israel is the democratically elected. I mean, how many elections have we had in Israel over the last 2 years? And you compare that
continually, yeah.
Right. And then you compare that to, the Palestinian Authority, which Abbas is in his 15th year of his 5-year term, right, from 2005. And so the upside down world is only recognized by these very few radicals inside governments and inside multilateral institutions like the UN. But regular people know, and regular people are with us. And so I think it's incumbent upon many of us who support Israel, Christians, Jews, even Muslims, who recognize that Israel is a protected country and should be a protected country, that we all have to articulate exactly what's going on with companies like Ben & Jerry's. It's wrong, and again, it's an upside down world that they have, And I think that they're going to suffer from it.
Yeah.
I don't think that sales are going to increase.
It's an easy, kind of silly story sounding to trivialize that the sale of ice cream is a big deal. But what it is, like you said, it's a much bigger problem when it becomes Ben & Jerry's. Then Ben & Jerry's turns into your next company, which is the next company. And all of a sudden, the corporate world feels like they have to react or they have to start doing this. And we've seen that snowball roll. I was talking to someone recently who was, what you would say was canceled, a famous person, and said, but what we did, we started going around the country and realizing that, wait a second, just because the media had said, no, we're not going to book you anymore. No, you're not going to be on TV anymore. No, you're not going to get this. Guess what, though? They go town to town and sell out shows day after day after day because the normal people who actually are the audience, not the big corporations, they're not taking it that way.
Look, I think it's really important that our listeners and viewers that are listening to this discussion, that they not just be outraged if they're in their car or at home listening, that they not just say, oh my gosh, that's terrible. What kind of world are we living in? But there are things that you can do, and we need the masses. And I would say there are two things that you can do if you're listening. One, you have to support the ACLJ. We are able to go after and file in court, which is where I think we can win more often, legal challenges. We highlight these issues. You've got to have an organization that jumps on this immediately and organizes all of us. That's the ACLJ. And two, I think on this specific issue, when you go to the grocery store, I would ask to speak to the manager. And I would say, I just want you to know I'm not buying Ben & Jerry's.
Yeah.
And make that grassroots point that Ben & Jerry's have made a move and you don't agree with it. And so therefore, because they are doing a BDS move, you're going to also vote with your pocketbook.
Yep. And
you're going to tell the manager that you're not buying that ice cream.
Yeah, this is not a just small decision corporately. You can go, I can get past it. This is a major decision from a major company.
Right. I mean, they're owned by Unilever.
Yeah.
It's not just Ben & Jerry's isn't just a small company.
Anymore.
It's a division of a very large company that produces a whole host of products.
Yeah,
so that's also to remember that as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are commenting that as well. Look, I've never been the person who's like, hey, boycott this, don't do this. We're obviously that's specifically what they're doing. But guess what I'm not doing? And I certainly will not be purchasing Ben & Jerry's ice cream for the foreseeable future unless major changes are made. And not that it was, necessarily the big thing that everyone was going to right now is it's Ben & Jerry's craze right now. It's not the 90s anymore. But it still is a major company that people need to respond to and react to, and don't treat it lightly because it sounds like a funny thing with ice cream being pulled. You're talking about people who, and again, it always hurts the people. Right. They never decide to hurt the governments. You say to go after what's going on, actually the problems in some of these regions. It's let's punish just the regular people in
Who do you
Israel.
think is selling the ice cream in these places? It's shop owners. It's small business owners.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for joining us.